July 17th, 2005. It was a Sunday, with the clear skies and mild temperatures typical of a winter in northeastern Brazil. José Antonio Ferreira, 47, and his wife, Maria das Graças Ferreira, 45, were seen for the last time leaving their small rural property in the Agreste region of Paraíba in the municipality of Areia, 130 kilometers from João Pessoa. The couple, known in the area for their yam and cassava crops, had told family they were heading to the Sunday market in town and would later attend the baptism of their nephew, the son of José's brother, Severino Ferreira. José was a man of medium height, his skin weathered by the constant sun of working the fields. Maria was a woman with delicate features despite the harshness of country life. They owned a 12-hectare farm inherited from José's father about 8 years earlier. They were the parents of 3 children, all adults who had moved to larger cities in the region, a daughter in Campina Grande and 2 sons in João Pessoa. They left around 6:30 in the morning, recalled Joana Ferreira, the couple's eldest daughter, in her initial statement to the police. My father was wearing a blue plaid shirt, jeans, and a straw hat. My mother wore a floral dress and carried a cloth bag she had made herself. The path the couple would travel was a familiar routine one, approximately 7 kilometers along a dirt road that connected their farm to the town of Areia. The region, characterized by gentle vegetation-covered hills and small rural properties, was especially green at that time of year due to the northeastern winter rains. José and Maria were making the journey on their red 1998 Honda CG 125 motorcycle, the vehicle they used for all their travels. They were expected to arrive at Severino Ferreira's house around 11 o'clock a.m. for a lunch before the baptism, which was scheduled for 3 o'clock p.m. at the main church in the town center. When the clock struck 12:30 p.m. and the couple had neither arrived nor answered calls to the single cell phone they shared, the family began to worry. My brother was never late for family commitments, especially something as important as my son's baptism. He was very responsible and punctual, Severino Ferreira recalled in an interview years later. When it hit 1 o'clock and they still hadn't arrived, I knew something was wrong. The first official alert about their disappearance was filed at 7:42 p.m. that same Sunday, when Severino went to the civil police station in Areia to report that his brother and sister-in-law had missed the baptism and were not responding to any attempts at contact. The report, case number 2087-2005, marked the formal beginning of an investigation that would remain unsolved for over a decade. The first searches began the following morning, July 18th. A team of 6 military police officers, 2 civil police investigators, and about 20 volunteers, mostly family and neighbors, scoured the entire length of the road between the couple's farm and the town. The red motorcycle was nowhere to be found, nor were any of their belongings or any sign of an accident. Upon arriving at the couple's farm, police found the property in order. The house was locked, the chickens had been fed, and there were no apparent signs of a struggle or violence. The only anomaly was the absence of the 2 dogs the couple owned, a medium-sized mutt named Valente and a younger female named Pipoca. It looked like they had left normally and intended to return soon, just as they said they would, reported Sergeant Claudio Mendes, one of the first officers on the scene. The formal investigation into the disappearance of José and Maria Ferreira began on Monday, July 18, 2005, under the direction of Delegate Renato Albuquerque. With no signs of violence at the property and the motorcycle also missing, the police's initial hypothesis was that José and Maria might have had an accident in a more isolated part of the region. We expanded the searches beyond the main road, checking all trails and alternative paths in a 20-kilometer radius around the farm and the town, the delegate explained in a report dated July 25, 2005. We even used teams with sniffer dogs provided by the fire department from Campina Grande, but not a single trace was found. The second line of investigation, which gained traction after the first week of fruitless searches, was the possibility of a voluntary disappearance. This theory was bolstered when investigators discovered that José had withdrawn $4,800 from his bank account 3 days before they vanished, a considerable sum by the family's standards. Initially, that withdrawal caught our attention, confirmed investigator Marcos Vinicius Costa. But the couple's children quickly clarified that the money was intended to pay temporary workers who were to help with the yam harvest, scheduled to begin the following week. Indeed, the rudimentary accounting records found in the couple's home confirmed this version. José kept a notebook where he logged all the farm's expenses and income. The last entry, dated July 16th, read, "Prepare payment for workers, harvest Monday." In August 2005, about 20 days after the disappearance, the first potentially concrete lead emerged. A fisherman reported seeing a red motorcycle submerged in the waters of the Boqueirão Reservoir, about 40 kilometers from Araya. A team of divers from the fire department was dispatched and did, in fact, recover a red Honda CG 125. However, after checking the chassis number, it was proven not to be José and Maria's motorcycle, but a vehicle that had been stolen in Campina Grande months earlier. It was a false lead that consumed precious time and resources, lamented Delegate Albuquerque in an interview with a local newspaper in September 2005. But we continue to work with all possibilities. Meanwhile, new elements began to surface. 3 of the Ferreira's neighbors told police that in the week before the disappearance, José had mentioned he was worried about a land dispute. According to these accounts, an area of about 2 hectares on his property was being claimed by Antonio Justino, the owner of an adjacent farm. José told me he had received an offer to sell that part of the land, but he refused. After that, he started receiving veiled threats, stated Joaquim Nascimento, a neighbor and longtime friend of the missing couple. Antonio Justino was summoned to testify on September 5, 2005. In his statement, he vehemently denied any involvement. "Yes, I was interested in that strip of land, but we were resolving it legally. I have documents that prove that area originally belonged to my family," Justino declared. His alibi, that he was in João Pessoa visiting a sick son at the university hospital on the day of the disappearance, was confirmed by hospital records and witnesses. Another line of inquiry emerged in October 2005, when an anonymous witness contacted the police, claiming to have seen the couple boarding an intercity bus to Recife in the state of Pernambuco on the very day they disappeared. Police checked passenger logs and security camera footage from the bus stations in Araya and Campina Grande, but found no confirmation of this information. By the end of 2005, the case was already growing cold. The local police department, with its limited resources, had to deal with new cases, while leads on the Ferreira disappearance dried up. In December of that year, the case file was transferred to the Homicide Division in Campina Grande, where it was reclassified as a disappearance with a possible homicide to be investigated. Between 2006 and 2007, few new developments occurred. The family hired a private investigator, Sergio Menezes, who conducted his own investigation for about 8 months, with no conclusive results. I followed some leads to Recife and even Ceará, based on reports from people who claimed to have seen the couple, but nothing was ever proven, Menezes explained in a report delivered to the family in August 2007. In 2008, the case gained brief national attention when it was featured on a popular television program. The exposure generated about 30 new calls with information, all of which were investigated by the Paraíba police. but none led to any significant breakthroughs. One theory that gained strength over the years was the possibility that the couple had been victims of a criminal group active in the region at the time, which specialized in motorcycle theft and allegedly had connections to a network that dismantled and resold parts between Paraíba and Pernambuco. However, when two members of this group were arrested in 2010 for other crimes, both denied any involvement in the Ferreira case. In 2012, the investigation was officially classified as open without progress due to a lack of new evidence. For the family, all that remained was the painful wait and an ever-fading hope for answers. The winter of 2018 in Paraíba was particularly rainy. Between April and July, the rainfall in the Agreste region exceeded the historical average by 40%. This climatic peculiarity would be the catalyst that would finally shed light on the mystery that had endured for 13 years. On May 23, 2018, the Ferreira's old farm, which had been sold by the family in Tuiten, was sold again. The new owners, a couple named Roberto and Lucia Mendonça, planned to transform the property into a small rural inn. "We bought the farm because we fell in love with the view and the tranquility of the place," Roberto later stated in a deposition. "We vaguely knew the story of the missing couple, but it was so long ago that we didn't give it much importance." Renovations on the property began in June 2010. On July 12th, while excavating for a new septic tank, workers made a macabre discovery at the back of the property, about 80 meters from the main house in an area that was partially submerged during the rainy season. "We were digging when the backhoe hit something metallic," described José Ferreira da Costa, one of the workers. "We thought it was an old pipe or a buried drum. When we cleared the area around it, we saw it was a large metal barrel." The barrel, with a capacity of about 200 liters, was buried about 1.5 meters deep. The intense rains of the preceding weeks had washed away some of the soil covering it, making it easier to locate. When the workers tried to remove the container, they realized it was extremely heavy and showed signs of advanced corrosion. "That's when we decided to open the barrel right there to see what was inside," José continued, visibly shaken even as he recalled the scene months later. "I will never forget the moment we saw what was inside." Inside the rusted barrel, partially filled with rainwater and mud, were human remains in an advanced state of decomposition. There were two skeletons arranged in a way that suggested the bodies had been placed in a fetal position to fit into the limited space. The military police were immediately called and secured the area. Delegate Gustavo Nunes from the Homicide Division of Campina Grande took over the case and ordered the careful removal of the barrel and its contents, which were transported to the forensic lab in João Pessoa. The news spread quickly through the small town of Areia. For many longtime residents, the discovery immediately brought to mind the Ferreira couple, who had been missing for nearly 13 years. The family was notified and went to the lab to provide information that could aid in identification. Preliminary analyses conducted between July 13th and 20th, 2018 revealed crucial data. The remains belonged to a man and a woman with estimated ages between 45 and 50, consistent with José and Maria Ferreira. Both showed fractures in their skulls, suggesting they had been killed by blunt force trauma before being placed in the barrel. The fracture patterns indicate at least 3 high-force impacts to the male skull and 2 to the female, likely caused by a heavy object such as a piece of wood or a metal bar, explained Dr. Claudia Rodriguez, the medical examiner responsible for the analysis. Along with the remains, fragments of fabric were found that were consistent with the descriptions of the clothes the couple was wearing on the day they disappeared, including buttons from a plaid shirt and parts of a dress with a floral pattern. A partially deteriorated men's wristwatch was also recovered. along with a gold wedding band with the initials J and M engraved inside, an item that Joanna, the couple's daughter, confirmed belonged to her parents. The definitive identification came on August 2nd, 2018, when the results of a DNA test compared with samples provided by their 3 children confirmed that the remains were, in fact, those of José Antonio Ferreira and Maria das Graças Ferreira. The report concluded that both had been murdered by cranioencephalic trauma, likely on the very day of their disappearance, July 17th, 2005. It was 13 years of anguish, of not knowing what had happened, of imagining 1,000 different possibilities. It's a relief to finally give our parents a dignified burial. But the pain of knowing how they died, and that they were there all this time so close to home, is indescribable. These were the words of Pedro Ferreira, the couple's youngest son, at a press conference the day after the confirmation. With the news that the human remains indeed belonged to José and Maria Ferreira, the investigation, which had grown cold over the years, was reignited with new fervor. Detective Gustavo Nunes formed a task force dedicated exclusively to the case, unearthing all the material from the original inquiry and reanalyzing testimonies and evidence in light of the new discovery. The location where the bodies were found tells us a great deal, the detective explained at a press conference on August 10, 2018. The barrel was in an area of the property that wasn't frequently visited, partially hidden by dense vegetation and which flooded during the rainy season. This suggests that whoever committed the crime knew the terrain intimately. A crucial element in this new phase of the investigation was the realization that the barrel used to conceal the bodies did not originally belong to the Ferreira's property. Metallurgical analysis revealed that the container had been manufactured by the now-defunct Nordest Metallurgy Company in Recife. It possessed characteristics of barrels used for storing agricultural chemicals in the early 2000s. In mid-August 2018, investigators uncovered a purchase record for 6 identical barrels from an agricultural supply store in Campina Grande, dated March 2005. Among the listed buyers was Edmilson Gomes, known as Milson, who had worked as a foreman on the neighboring Aldous Ferreira ranch between 2004 and 2006. Milson, now 61, had moved to the interior of Rio Grande do Norte after leaving Paraíba in 2007. Located in the small town of Acari, he was brought to Campina Grande for questioning on August 27, 2018. Initially, he denied any involvement in the crime, but when confronted with the evidence of the barrel and informed that his DNA would be compared with traces found at the scene, his demeanor changed. After a 6-hour interrogation, Edmilson Gomes confessed to killing José and Maria Ferreira, but claimed he had acted on someone else's orders. According to his testimony, he was hired by Antonio Justino, the neighbor who was in a land dispute with José, to scare the couple into selling the contested area. Justino had offered him 5,000 reais to convince the Ferreiras to sell that strip of land. He said he needed that area because he had discovered a water spring there that would make his property much more valuable, Milson stated in his confession, which was recorded on video. According to his testimony, on the morning of July 17, 2005, Milson intercepted the couple as they were leaving for town on their motorcycle. Using a pickup truck, he blocked their path and forced them to return to their farm for a talk. Back at the property, the argument escalated when José vehemently refused to negotiate the sale of the land. "I didn't mean to kill anyone, I swear to God," Milson confessed, his nervousness palpable. But José got very angry. He said he was going to report the threats to the police. He went inside the house and came back with an old shotgun. We struggled, and in the confusion, I hit him with a piece of wood. Maria started screaming and came at me. And I hit her too. After the crime, Milson said he panicked and decided to hide the bodies. He used the barrel he had purchased months earlier to store pesticides. He placed the bodies inside, sealed it with concrete, and buried it in the low-lying part of the land, knowing the area flooded periodically and would make it difficult to find. The motorcycle, I took it apart and sold the parts to a scrapyard in Campina Grande. I burned all of the couple's documents and their cell phone, he added. Based on Milson's confession, Antonio Justino was arrested on a preventive warrant on August 30th, 2018. In his defense, he claimed to be unaware of Milson's plans to use violence and denied ordering the murders. However, an investigation into Justino's bank accounts revealed a cash withdrawal of 5,000 reais 2 days before the crime, and a deposit of a similar amount into Milson's account 3 days after. The trial of Edmilson Gomes and Antonio Justino took place in March 2019. Milson was sentenced to 32 years in prison for 2 counts of aggravated murder, concealment of a corpse, and other related crimes. Justino received a 28-year sentence for masterminding the crime. Both are serving their sentences at the Geraldo Beltrão Maximum Security Penitentiary in João Pessoa. The discovery of the truth and the conviction of the culprits brought a mixture of relief and renewed pain for the Ferreira family. On September 15, 2018, the remains of José and Maria were finally laid to rest in the municipal cemetery of Areia, in a ceremony that brought together hundreds of people from the local community. My parents were simple people, farm workers who only wanted to live in peace on their land. They were killed for greed, for a piece of ground that to them was more than property. It was their history, it was their life, reflected their daughter, Joana Ferreira, at the funeral. Now they can rest, and we can begin to move forward knowing that justice, however late, has been done. The Ferreira case led to significant changes in the protocols for investigating disappearances in Paraíba. In 2020, the José and Maria Ferreira law was sanctioned, establishing more rigorous procedures and specific resources for missing persons cases in the state, including the creation of a genetic database to facilitate future identifications. The property where the crime occurred remains in the possession of the family who bought it, who abandoned their plans to build an inn and now maintain the site as a small ecological reserve. At the exact spot where the barrel was unearthed, a simple memorial was erected with a plaque that reads, José and Maria Ferreira, may the truth always come to light no matter how deeply it is buried. In 2023, the case became the subject of an award-winning documentary titled 13 Years Under the Earth. Produced by a national broadcaster, it explored not only the details of the crime but also the family's struggle for answers and the flaws in the investigative system that allowed the case to remain unsolved for so long. For the older residents of Areia and the surrounding region, the story of the Ferreiras has become a local legend, a somber reminder that secrets, no matter how well kept, have a way of surfacing when least expected. For the investigators who worked on the case over the years, it was a lesson that no detail is too small to be ignored, and that persistence, even in the face of scarce clues, is essential for justice to prevail. A case is never truly closed until we have the answers, Detective Gustavo Nunes reflected years later. Time can be both an enemy and an ally in the search for truth. In the Ferreira case, it was time and the rain that finally revealed what the earth had been hiding for 13 years. If you have listened this far, it is because you care about these cases that scar families forever. Please leave a comment letting us know you're here to show your support for the search for truth. And don't forget to like and share this story so that more people may know what happened and so that other cases like this might gain the visibility they need to. One day, find the justice they deserve.